So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to come and talk at your event this morning here in New York. I really appreciate that. I've got a slot. I know it's first thing in the morning for all of you guys this morning. So I hope that what I'm going to present this morning will be a bit of a stimulus for thought and be the presentation version of an espresso and provide some useful context for discussions throughout the rest of this session. So this morning I'm going to present on the future of television. Let me explain a little bit about what Ovum is. Ovum, we are a technology research business. We do a lot of strategic consulting within telcos, within broadcasters, within production companies, and media agencies as well. And we spend a lot of our time going very deep into the technology value chain behind industries, and broadcast in particular. And there's a huge amount of change happening in this market right now that is affecting all of the commercial models within this business, both ad sales models, rights models, device distribution models. We have new market entrants. We have existing players trying to adapt very, very quickly to keep up. And most importantly, we have traditional business relationships also being forced to adapt to keep up. I'd like to keep this session very interactive. So if you have any questions for me while I do the talk, raise your hand and I'll look to field those as I do this presentation. We'll have a chance for a Q&A at the end, but like I said, I'd like to keep this as interactive as possible. So agenda this morning, we're going to do a fast introduction to disruption in this market and value chain evolution. We're going to look at some empirical evidence of near-term resilience within broadcast. We're going to be looking at some empirical evidence of consumer behavior associated with broadcast on devices other than the core television. We're going to look at probably what is the most scary commercial model in the market right now for traditional broadcast, which is Netflix. And we'll look at that not just from a commercial point of view, but also from a technical point of view, because that's actually the real heart of the story. And then finally, we're going to look at what are the competitive threats here? Is this really structural discontinuity? And then finally, what is the impact on broadcast advertising and media buying within this market? And then we'll open it up to Q&A. Okay, so just around the corner from here is the courtroom of the Southern District of New York. Now, right in this courtroom right now is a showdown between Viacom and Time Warner and Cablevision. And the lawsuit that Viacom has brought between Viacom, Time Warner and Cablevision is illustrative of a lot of the problems that are happening within this market right now. So Viacom complaint is that Time Warner Cable has released an iPad application that provides access to Viacom content. And this is content that Viacom has licensed to Time Warner Cable for distribution over its cable systems. But Time Warner Cable, like everybody else, wants to roll out what's known as the TV everywhere model. It wants to take advantage of everybody using iPads in their living room. But Viacom doesn't like this, because Viacom has got other parties that it can distribute this content through, that it can sell these rights to. It has old rights agreements with Time Warner Cable that don't foresee anything like an iPad coming along. And all of the views of Viacom content on the Time Warner Cable iPad app, they're not measured by Nielsen. So there's no incremental value to Viacom at all. So Viacom has slapped down a cease and desist. And Cablevision just launched its own TV everywhere model and has just received the same complaint. What we're seeing here, live playing out right now in a courtroom around the corner, is a very good example of all of the things that are wrong in this market right now, and how the value chain has got to sort out this mess. And if any of you want a copy of the complaint, do let me know and I'll send it to you guys, because it's very, very interesting reading. Now, you'll all be very aware of all of these things that I've got up on the slide here. But let's just run through what all these different factors are doing to this market. So Comcast. We've got Comcast is rolling out this model of TV everywhere. That is access to cable content, premium cable content, yep, on a non-traditional television platform, so on your PC, on your iPad, or on your smartphone, and not just within its cable network market footprint, but also in its market footprint outside its traditional cable network. So it's removing some of the traditional geographical barriers of operation for the cable industry here in the US. We have Netflix. Yep, Netflix is introducing what's known as a cloud TV model, over the top. It doesn't have any transmission infrastructure. It doesn't provide anybody with a set-top box. It just acquires the rights. It leverages a cloud platform from Amazon Web Services, and it's rolling out into new markets very, very quickly and moving up and down the value chain, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. We have Google in this market, trying to push Google TV. Yep, it hasn't been that successful so far. Ultimately, it's about getting YouTube into the market. Google, likewise, is moving into original content production as well, and ultimately Google, where it really wants to go, is to have some ownership of an eventual broadcast ad exchange, which it is doing today on remnant inventory on cable. We have projects like iPlayer, so that's free-to-air terrestrial broadcast, yep, moving to a multi-platform distribution model and ultimately a commercial model. The BBC is a public sector broadcaster, but is about to launch paid-for applications, paid-for access to its content in markets outside the UK. We have Apple in this market at two ends, both as a streaming video box in the form of Apple TV, an on-demand model, but with a set-top box very similar to Netflix, and of course the iPad, which has been a massive catalyst for change in this market by introducing a new screen into the home that is replacing the idea of having a second screen. Yep, you have your major screen in the living room, yep, and users are using the iPad as a secondary screen in the home, and that is providing a very important channel for over-the-top on-demand content. We have UView. Who here, oh sorry, Ultraviolet. Who here has heard of Ultraviolet? So Ultraviolet is a project that's been put together by all of the major West Coast studios, by the major US networks. Nielsen is involved, but also some major technology companies, Capgemini, Accenture, IBM, Red Bee in the UK. And what this is a single source of rights for the consumer. So you can buy a DVD, you can buy a Blu-ray player, you can buy a Blu-ray, yep, and you can download the digital version of that asset onto any device based on a user ID that is owned by Ultraviolet. Yep, and this is about the content industry owning that user identity, owning that single sign-on, and not Apple, and not Google, not Facebook, not Netflix. Very interesting project to look at. Yep, and then finally, obviously, there's Facebook. Yep, so Facebook is introduced, or is been the main channel for bringing social to television. It's happening at two levels. At the basic level, this is just about doing basic marketing on Facebook, letting an audience know that a show is available, driving increased gross rating points from marketing the availability of a show. But then the next level down is integration of Facebook into your multi-platform service delivery, so that you're actually gathering a whole new range of data about your audience, feeding that back into your content buying, your scheduling, yep, and your media sales as well. So we're seeing disruption from all of these guys at every point in the traditional broadcast model. But this is the traditional broadcast value chain. It's very linear. It's very predictable, yep, and as a result, and it's been operating like this basically for the last 20 years of multi-channel television. At the commercial end of this market, we have studios, rights federations, talent agencies. We then have aggregators and distributors, broadcasters, yep, advertisers, media buyers, you guys, pay TV, free-to-air transmission platforms, ultimately the TV manufacturer, yep, and then finally audience or subscribers, depending on what kind of model you're running. But it's very linear, it's very predictable, yep, there are defined roles within this value chain, yep, for all of those parties, and each have their own levels of risk, yep, and their commercial model, yep, that they operate against. At the technical level, because you have this very mature value chain, we also have a very mature technical model as well. We have parties that are out there in the market today that go and manage EPG data, yep, and then go and syndicate that EPG data in each individual market. You have parties within this market that provide outsourced production and engineering services, that provide playout services, that provide media localization services, that provide outsourced audience measurement as well, obviously. And then finally, we have a whole load of subsidiary services organizations below that, all of whom provide either network or outsourced technology services. Very, very structured, and it's very, very linear. But now we move to this. We move away from the idea of having scheduled content. We are moving to an on-demand environment where if you want to own the customer, if you want to own the customer identity, you have to provide access to premium content when and how they want it and on what device. So we have here audiences at the heart of this, and all of these different players who used to be occupy a very defined position within that value chain and now have the ability to be right up front to the customer. So suddenly all of these different parties, the TV OEM, studio and talent, aggregator and distributor, broadcaster, even the advertiser themselves, or the pay TV transmission platform, all have the ability to go and distribute content and merchandise content direct to the customer, and be able to serve inventory against that. And then we have a whole bunch of new market entrants as well, who ultimately are providing the platform to be able to go and that the consumer can use to go and access all of that content. And it's creating a whole new set of competitors for these existing players. But we're also creating an additional risk here, because as you go and provide access to content on a range of different devices, you're also introducing the new element of risk of piracy if the consumer reacts to the set of terms that you're asking them to go and consume content against. Now, everything I've described so far sounds like we're seeing a huge amount of change. The end is nigh for broadcast. They've got to change now or get the game's up. But actually, the reality is, in the short term, that's not true at all. What we're seeing, as I'm sure many of you guys who work in the US, and you'll see this very well, is actually there's a huge amount of resilience in broadcast. We've seen an incredibly healthy upfront here in the US. We've seen double-digit growth in CPMs. In Europe, in Northern Europe and Western Europe, we're seeing very strong growth in broadcast. Again, very strong growth in CPM rates. In Scandinavia and in Germany in particular. In Southern Europe, it's a lot less strong. But this isn't because of technical change or technology disruption. This is a macroeconomic effect. So in the near term, actually, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Netflixes are actually having very little real effect today on the amount of demand for broadcast spot advertising today. But that's in the near term. And we'll discuss in this presentation where some of the changes are going to come from. What are the vectors for change? Within the pay TV market, so we discussed advertising, now we're talking about pay, so the subscription model. Again, pay TV is actually very resilient. We're not seeing overnight cord cutting, with one potential exception, which is the US. And I'll come back to that in a second. Pay TV is very, very resilient. And we have two key defensive barriers for pay TV, and that is bundling, and that is sports. Let me just flick through this. So we conduct research across multiple markets, Asia Pacific, Western Europe, and North America, to try and look at reasons about why consumers are buying certain services. And for us, pay TV is one of those that is an absolute focus area for us. And we wanted to understand, in an age of free content online, when you can go and get it from a catch-up service, or you can get from a Netflix, or you can get from a Love Film, content, the exact content that you want, why are you continuing to pay for pay TV? And we had an inkling, but we wanted to know. And so what you can see here, this is a response. It's 10,000. The panel is 10,000. So top better range of content than any other single provider. Yep, so your pay TV business, your pay TV service provider is aggregating enough content, yep, into a single service and is providing you a very credible and real content proposition. Better quality of content, so translate for movies, yep, and sports. And then the third one, and this is really important, bundling. You as a pay TV operator, in many cases, are also an ISP, yep, or you're providing broadband through your cable service. And bundling a premium television model, premium television service, yep, with your broadband access service, or even a triple play bundle with your mobile service, is a very attractive proposition for your customer base. Yep, and that's something that is very much in evidence here in the US, yep, and in other markets around Europe. We still have some markets in which we have an absolute dominant satellite player, where there's very little bundling. Yep, and then it's all about rights. It's all about the buying power of that one satellite player, yep, to own all of the premium sports rights. Yep. In markets, though, where there is more competition in the pay TV market, it becomes more about bundling, particularly when those satellite players, such as Sky in the UK, yep, has also then become an ISP as well. So, huge amount of defensibility in the pay TV market as well. So, then where does this change come from? If we're seeing near-term defensibility within broadcast advertising, we're seeing near-term defensibility within pay TV model, actually is all of the technology stuff that I had on my first couple of slides, yep, is that just, you know, another scare story? Yep, and the TV industry has been through this over the last 10 years. Yep. Our conjecture is that it's absolutely not just another scare story. There's some fundamental issues that are actually going to drive real change in this market. So this is Nielsen data, I'm afraid, but it's in the US. So what we're looking at here is relative usage per month by different age groups of video on different platforms. So we can see that conventional broadcast linear viewing, yep, is still absolutely dominant. And actually, if you look at the total minutes viewed per day, it's actually growing in many markets because of multi-channel television. But what's very interesting, if you notice the demographic change, yep, by age against consumption on these different platforms. So the biggest, in aggregate, non-traditional, non-linear service is DVR playback. Yep. And we've all been looking at DVR playback for the last decade. Yep. And we've all seen DVR playback sort of paid a little bit of lip service to in the ratings, but largely ignored. But if you see where we see the biggest growth year on year out of any of these age groups, yep, it's actually in this 12 to 17 age group. Yep. So the market of today is about to go into young adult, yep, that crucial 18 to 24 age group, and that is their viewing of video on mobile devices. Yep. And that may be a smartphone, yep, or that may be an iPad. Now, this is the incredible catalyst in this market. Yep. And a lot of what we do, not just within the broadcast market, but also within telco, yep, and our work in other industries as well, yep, we see, yep, one major mathematical fact driving change across all of these different industries. Yep. And that is the incredible growth within the smartphone market this year and last year. In 2011, just smartphones, yep, of which 80% are Android and iOS devices, yep, will exceed the total number of desktop PCs and notebook PCs sold in aggregate worldwide. By 2015, we will have 2 billion people worldwide, yep, with a smartphone in their hand. And if there's one absolute truth in the technology industry, is that you get major change when you hit scale. Things happen twice as slowly, yep, and then they happen twice as fast as you think they will. Yep, and that is absolutely what we're seeing in the smartphone market today. These are devices that are never more than a meter away from the user, and they are very powerful, portable computing devices that are always connected. Now this has implications obviously way beyond broadcast, but obviously why it's important to broadcast, and that is because they are a companion device. Yep, when the customer is sitting there watching TV, yep, plus, yep, the user then takes away their device and it has it with them, yep, when they walk away, yep, from their X hours a day TV viewing. It's the most important catalyst, technology catalyst, yep, actually within this market. Tablets, by the way, are just this small blip on the top. And there's, just to keep the tablet issue in context, we refer to tablets as like they're the shop window, yep, for a lot of these new applications. But in terms of where the volume is going to come from, where the scale is going to come from, yep, and to everybody here in this room, obviously, scale and volume is what's important. You can't take something to one of your clients unless you actually have enough scale to be able to offer them. Yep, that's actually coming from the smartphone base. So let's look at how this is actually how that growth in the smartphone base is actually translating to the consumption of video viewing, yep, away from the TV set. What we saw in 2010 is a really very substantial growth in the consumption of video on mobile devices, yep, driven by that growth in both the iOS, yep, and the Android installed base. This is across Europe, so it's pretty consistent. Yep, we're seeing roughly basically between 40, yep, and 45% growth year on year in 2010 in mobile video viewing. And this is mobile web video, just to be clear. This is not mobile linear broadcast. Yep, so mobile linear broadcast was the model that the traditional free-to-air broadcast industry tried to push out throughout the 2000s, yep, and failed miserably. Yep, it won't go anywhere. The economics of getting an extra chipset put in the back of the mobile phone just isn't going to fly. Yep, this is video that is coming into the smartphone over your traditional 3G network, yep, or over Wi-Fi. Yep, and a lot of this is happening in the home as well. But the other very interesting thing is if we look at the types of video that are getting consumed on mobile devices. So there was an assumption that it was just going to be clips. Yep, it's going to be YouTube content. It's not going to be professionally produced content. Yeah, however, we choose to define professionally produced content. But we're actually seeing growth across all of these different genre categories. Yep, so catch-up is big. Clips, obviously. Broadcast TV programming is big. Live is big. And we're also seeing growth in consumption of on-demand movie content as well. Long form, short form, and catch-up. We're seeing growth in all of those different categories. But let's keep the mobile story in perspective. Mobile is big, and absolutely it's going to be a major driver for change in this market. Yeah, but let's keep it in context today. So this is iPlayer data. Yeah, I'm sure you're all aware of the BBC iPlayer. Yeah, came to market in 2006. It's probably the most mature +7 day catch-up multi-platform service delivered by a free-to-air broadcaster today, although it's a public sector broadcaster. The red bars at the top, that's mobile. Still small. Relative to PC, which is the pink bars here. We've got PS3 here. These are the black bars here. Significant proportion. And then here we have, very interestingly, Virgin Media. Virgin Media is like is a cable provider in the UK. Yep, and they've integrated iPlayer, yep, as an application on their set-top platform. Yep, so in addition to providing access to free-to-air BBC channels, they're also providing access to the BBC catch-up service portal, on their platform too. Very brave decision by Virgin Media. It's been very good for them in terms of subscriber acquisition.
Sorry, why do you say that mobile is going to grow? Because this doesn't suggest that.
Yeah. So this was from 2010, and the reason why I wanted to put this up there is it's a reality check, on the aggregate data, that we're seeing that we've got here. So this is data taken in aggregate. It's ComScore data, and the point about showing the BBC data is to keep this in perspective, relative to PC data.
So measuring this by the sales of glasses, because I mean it's a very tiny screen. You actually believe that people are going to watch video on that screen, mainstream?
Yeah, because here's the mathematical reality of this. If you have 2 billion devices, in the market, we have 2 billion devices in the market. You have the device with the consumer, at any point. So while they're on a train, while they are moving between, whatever they're doing, while they're in the home, while other people within their family are watching what they want to on the main TV screen within the living room, they can then go and watch something else on their mobile screen.
When you're saying mobile screen, you're referring also to tablets?
Yes. Yeah. So let's come back now to what users, this is situational usage, of devices. So we have over here tablets, where people are using tablets within the home. And we're seeing that a huge amount of tablet usage is coming from consumers while they're watching TV. So what this is saying is that over 70% of tablet owners are using their tablet while the TV is on. Let's think about the implications of that in a moment. Then in the bedroom, they're using tablets in the bedroom, and again, this is the second screen in the home issue. While they're waiting for something is very important, so killing dead time. And then we run through all the way through a range of other applications. Commuting, for example, is very low for tablets. That's because many of them don't come with a 3G connection, so you can only use it when you've got a Wi-Fi connection. What's very interesting here, if we relate the differences between tablets and smartphones, which have a relatively similar behavioral usage in the context of watching TV, smartphone usage while you're watching TV is very high, to e-reader usage, where because of the attention required to go and read an e-ink book on your e-reader, actually usage while you're watching TV is relatively low, but usage in the bedroom is much, much higher as a result. So this obviously leads us to what is the potential impact of tablets on broadcast spot advertising. So the thing that's rolling around in the industry a lot at the moment is this multitasking phenomenon, where you have consumers sitting there in their living room watching TV, and they're meant to be watching a spot ad, where the look away to your tablet is actually a much greater threat to engagement than the DVR ever was. Because the old argument, and you can believe whichever piece of research you want to believe around this, the argument around DVR that actually, because you are skipping through an ad, and you are actively trying to skip through an ad, and you don't miss, and you don't want to overskip, so you're actually paying a lot of attention to the different spots to make sure you don't overskip. Here, you just got look away. You don't have eyes on screen. And this is one of the major threats in the living room to how you actually actively engage, and drive recall from broadcast advertising within the home. I mean, in answer to your question about smartphones, I mean, smartphones in this context is also not just about providing video services. It's also about this multitasking factor as well. And the importance for a smartphone, as we'll come to in a minute, for whether you're a pay TV platform, whether you're a network, is that how do you take advantage of that? How do you actually go and provide a service, provide a platform that delivers a product that you can sell to an advertiser, given that you have your audience attention split between both your core television platform, and also the smartphone platform as well.